I found a birth certificate in the back of my mother's dresser drawer, hidden beneath old tax forms and expired passports, for a child who was not me. It had her name on it. Her signature. Her handwriting. But the name on the certificate wasn't mine. It belonged to someone named Daniel Thomas. Born in 1974. 10 years before me. I was born in '84, the last of 4. Or so I thought. I turned 41 this spring, just before everything started to unravel. I only looked because she kept calling me by that name. Mom had been slipping for a while, losing track of time, forgetting appointments, confusing neighbors with long-dead relatives. At first, it was little things. She'd misplace her keys, accuse the mailman of stealing them, then laugh it off an hour later with a "getting old is no joke, huh?" But when she started calling me Daniel, something shifted. Something deeper. And not just once, consistently. She'd look me straight in the eye and ask if I'd done my homework. She'd ask if I'd fed the cat. We never had a cat. And I'd correct her, gently, every time. "Mom, it's me. Michael." She'd blink. Stare through me like I was half-formed. Then say, "You look just like him." That's when I stopped sleeping well. I didn't mention it to my sisters right away. Not Claire, who was too busy managing her kids and real estate license. Not Sarah, who lived 2 states away and only called on birthdays. I told myself I didn't want to worry them. The truth? I didn't want it to be real yet. Not if I could help it. But after the 3rd week of hearing that name, Daniel, in that quiet, nostalgic tone of hers, like she was remembering a ghost, I knew I had to know who he was. That drawer wasn't even locked. The birth certificate was yellowed but intact. My mom's full name at the bottom. The father's name? Left blank. Date of birth, July 3, 1974. Place of birth, not even our home state. Nebraska. I vaguely remembered Mom once saying she spent a summer with an aunt out there, back before she met Dad. I sat on her bed with that piece of paper in my hands, and my whole body went cold. Because in all my 41 years, and neither had Claire or Sarah, I'd never once heard the name Daniel mentioned in our family. Not at Thanksgiving. Not in stories about when you kids were little. Not in any of the albums we'd flipped through when she still remembered who I was. It wasn't just a forgotten name. It was a hidden life. And suddenly, all those moments where she'd been off, all those times she looked at me like I was someone else, they took on a new weight. A quiet grief she hadn't shared. A wound that maybe never healed. I didn't ask her right away. That's the thing about dementia, it doesn't come with windows. You never know when she's lucid and when she's drifting. I waited. I watched. And then one morning, while I was making her oatmeal, she asked me, "Do you still play piano?" I froze. I've never played piano. Not a single note. But I said, "I haven't played in a while." She nodded. "Your fingers were always so small. Could barely reach an octave. But you practiced, didn't you?" I asked her, "Mom, who do you think I am?" She looked confused. "You're my son." "Which one?" A long pause. She furrowed her brow like she was peeling back layers of time. Then she said it again, "Daniel." That night, I called Sarah. She didn't know what to say at first. Just kept repeating, "Daniel. Are you sure?" I emailed her a photo of the certificate. She called back 5 minutes later, whispering like she didn't want her husband to hear. "We never had a brother, Mike. Mom never mentioned anyone. Not even once." "Then who is he?" I asked. Her voice broke a little. "I don't know. But if he was real, then she kept him secret from all of us." I looked at the certificate again. July 3, 1974. He would have been 51 now. Or, maybe not. Because when I turned the certificate over, there was something else scribbled in faded blue ink. Just one word. Adopted. But the tone of Mom's voice when she called me Daniel, that wasn't the voice of someone who'd let go. That was the voice of someone who had lost. And I was only just beginning to understand how deep that loss went. I saw a photo on her dresser that didn't belong to us. It was framed in gold, just like the rest, the same style she used for our kindergarten portraits and school plays, but the boy in this photo wasn't me, or either of my sisters. He looked maybe 10 or 11. Brown bowl cut, knobby elbows, corduroy pants. He was standing next to a piano. And that's what hit me first, the piano. We never had one, at least not since I was born. And that's what hit me first, the piano. We never had one. I picked the frame up carefully, like it might burn me. No label on the back. No date. But it looked like it had been there a while, dust gathering at the corners. I took it into the kitchen, where she was sipping tea, humming something I couldn't place. "Mom," I said, trying to sound casual, "who's this?" She glanced up. Her face changed. Not confusion. Not surprise. She smiled. "That's my Danny," she said softly. "My little maestro." She reached out like she wanted to hold the photo. Her hands trembled, fingers curling toward the glass, but she didn't take it. "He used to play Clair de Lune before bed," she said. "Every night." It made the whole apartment feel soft. I sat down slowly. "Mom, where is he?" She blinked. Then frowned. I don't know." It was the first time I saw the veil lift, the smile gone, her hands pulling back, her whole body folding inward like she'd said too much. She started stirring her tea again, over and over, like she was trying to stir her way out of the conversation. I didn't press. Because that look? That wasn't forgetfulness. That was pain. Old pain. That afternoon, I dug deeper. Old family albums. Boxes of VHS tapes. Birthday cards from people I barely remembered. I tore through all of it looking for any mention of Daniel, and found nothing. He wasn't just erased. He was intentionally removed. That night, Sarah called back. Said she'd been turning it over with her husband, trying to remember anything. "You know what's weird," she said. "When I was a teenager, maybe 15, I remember Mom freaking out when I found an old box in the attic. I don't remember what was in it, just that she lost it. Like, full-on yelling, made me swear I'd never go through her things again. I asked if it could have been about Daniel. I don't know," she whispered. "But now it makes sense why she overreacted." 2 days later, I brought the photo with me to her next doctor's appointment. Her neurologist, Dr. Kingsley, was one of those calm, precise types. The kind who speaks slowly and listens faster. When I told him about the name confusion, the photo, the birth certificate, he frowned just slightly. "Sometimes dementia unlocks memories that were buried for decades," he said. "Names. Emotions. Even sensory details. What's lost in the present gets replaced by echoes of the past. So when she calls me Daniel, she's seeing him. Or the idea of him. Her mind is reaching for what it can hold on to." I nodded. "But if she never told us about him, what does that say?" Dr. Kingsley was quiet for a beat. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "we bury the deepest things not because we forget them, but because remembering them hurts too much." I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about the way she touched the photo. That light, trembling reverence. Like it was holy. Like it was all she had left. And I couldn't stop wondering, if she loved him that much, what had happened to him? Was he alive? Was he okay? Did he even know we existed? The next morning, I drove to the county courthouse. Vital Records office. Waited in line behind a couple arguing over a marriage license. When it was my turn, I slid the birth certificate across the counter and asked for any records tied to Daniel Thomas, adoption, guardianship, anything. The clerk, a tired-looking woman with readers on a chain, scanned it. Then frowned. "This file's restricted," she said. "Sealed. No access unless you're the birth parent, or the child." I told her I was the child's brother. She looked up. "Not legally, you're not." I stood there for a second too long. My jaw clenched. "Is there anyone I can talk to?" I asked. She slid the certificate back toward me. "If you think something was done wrong, you can file a petition with the state. But if this was a private adoption, and the sealed status suggests it was, there's not much else you can do." I left the office with a hollow feeling in my chest. Sealed. Hidden. Even from me. That night, I sat across from Mom as she slowly worked her way through a bowl of pudding. She looked up, confused again. "Did you practice today?" she asked. I shook my head. "I don't play, Mom." Her face clouded. "Yes, you do," she said, suddenly insistent. "You love music. You used to sit on my lap and hum. Don't you remember?" I swallowed hard. "No. That wasn't me." She stared at me. And then, quietly, almost a whisper, she said, "Where did he go?" And the way she said it, it wasn't a question for me. It was the question she'd been asking herself for decades. I saw her mouthing the name again, Daniel, as I wheeled Mom through the halls of the nursing home. It was getting worse. Some days she knew who I was. Most days she didn't. But every day, she asked for Daniel. Like he was still a boy, still down the hall, still expected home by dinner. We'd moved her into Cedar Glen just a week before. I couldn't do it alone anymore, and Claire was right, it was breaking me. That's where I met Margaret. 86, sharp-eyed, playing checkers by herself in the rec room. When I dropped off some of Mom's books, she looked up and asked, "You her boy?" I nodded. "Michael." She pointed to Mom. "She's been talking about a son. One she lost." I froze. She said his name was Daniel. Played the piano. Fingers too small for the keys. Margaret gave a soft shrug. She only said it once, but she meant it. It was the same phrase Mom had used before. I went home and pulled out every dusty box of family junk I had. Old cards, letters, tax forms. And there, tucked behind a stack of old Christmas envelopes, I found it, a handwritten return address from the Sisters of Sacred Mercy, Lincoln, Nebraska. Dated 1987. Inside was one short paragraph. "We confirm receipt of your correspondence. Per your request, all records related to the adoption of the child will remain sealed. Please know that we continue to keep you in our prayers." No names. No details. Just, the child. The next morning, I called them. I didn't expect anyone to answer. But someone did, a woman, calm and clipped. When I gave Mom's name and said I was trying to find her son, she didn't seem surprised. "If you're asking about Daniel," she said, "I know who you mean." My chest tightened. "Is he alive?" "Yes. He was adopted again. Took the name Daniel Hart." She paused. "But he asked not to be contacted. He said if anyone ever came looking, he wanted them to mean it." And right then, I knew one thing with complete clarity. I was going to find my brother. No matter what it took. I found him in a music shop in Des Moines. Not by luck, by obsession. I'd spent 2 weeks chasing names, calling adoption agencies, and emailing anyone with Hart in their last name across 3 states. Most doors stayed shut. One cracked just enough. A woman named Ellen. She worked part-time at a church where Daniel had taught music lessons a decade earlier. I asked if she had a number. She didn't. But she remembered a flyer, some community program he helped launch. He was quiet, she said. Gentle. Kind eyes. Like someone who'd been through a storm and didn't want to cause another. I found the flyer. Still floating around online. The contact info led to a small, locally owned music store on the south side of Des Moines. When I walked in, I wasn't sure what I'd say if I saw him. But I didn't need to say anything at first. Because when he stepped out from the back, wiping his hands on a cloth, I froze. He looked just like me. Same jaw. Same shoulders. Same half-awkward way of standing, like we weren't built for standing still. He blinked when he saw me. Not confusion, recognition. I said the only thing I could. Are you Daniel Hart? His mouth didn't move at first. Just his eyes, searching mine like he was flipping through a photo album in his head. I am, he said. Cautiously. I stepped closer. My name's Michael. Michael Langley. He looked like he'd been punched. I think, I said carefully, you're my brother. He sat down hard on a stool behind the counter. Just sat there for a long time, breathing like he'd forgotten how. I always wondered, he said finally. If someone would come. I pulled out the photo from Mom's dresser, the one of him by the piano. He took it with both hands like it might break. For a second, his eyes glassed over. Then he set it down carefully, like returning something sacred to a shelf. She used to play Debussy, he said. At night. I'd sit by the door just to hear it through the wall. I nodded. She still talks about you. He blinked again. She's alive. Dementia. But yeah. And she remembers you. Every day. He looked away, jaw tight. I was 6 when they took me to the convent, he said. I thought it was a trip. Like a vacation. She kissed my forehead, said she'd be back soon. But she never came back. I've since read that back then, private placements through religious orders were fairly common, especially for single mothers with few options. Maybe she hadn't decided yet. Maybe she made the choice right after that kiss, in the hallway, or in the car. My throat went dry. She never stopped thinking about you, I said. He didn't answer. Just ran a hand through his hair, then whispered, why now? I was honest. I found your birth certificate. She started calling me by your name. Again and again. I had to know who you were. We sat in silence for a minute, the hum of a distant guitar amp buzzing like a second heartbeat. He finally looked up. Do I have siblings? I nodded. Claire. Sarah. And me. He smiled, just barely. You look like Dad. I paused. We don't know who he was. The certificate didn't list a name. He nodded slowly. Neither do I. Before I left, he gave me a photo, a recent one of him at the piano, smiling faintly, hand on the keys like they still held something that kept him tethered. If you think she'd want it, he said, you can bring me. She would, I said. And I do. As I drove home, I realized something I hadn't let myself feel until then. I wasn't just giving her back a lost son. I was getting a brother. And after 41 years of silence, that felt like a miracle. I brought him home on a Thursday. Daniel didn't pack much, just a weekend bag, a worn book of sheet music, and a black and white photo of the nun who raised him. I offered to book him a hotel nearby, but he said no. I want to be close. In case I lose my nerve. I didn't push. When we pulled into the parking lot of Cedar Glen, he sat in the car for a long time, staring through the windshield at nothing. She might not know who I am, he said quietly. She might, I told him. But even if she doesn't, it'll matter. We walked in together. The nurse on duty smiled politely. Daniel kept his eyes down. He didn't speak until we turned the corner toward her room. And then, he stopped. He didn't ask for a minute. Just stood there, fists clenched like he was bracing for a wave he couldn't see coming. I knocked gently and opened the door. Mom was sitting by the window, humming. I stepped in first. "Hey, Mom," I said. "You have a visitor." She turned slowly, eyes a little cloudy, mouth in a soft line of confusion. And then Daniel stepped into the light. She blinked. For a second, nothing. Then her hand fluttered up, trembling, and she said it. "Danny." His breath caught. "It's me, Mom," he said. Voice low, full of something between hope and sorrow. "I'm here." She started crying. Not loud. Not messy. Just quiet tears, running down her face like they'd been waiting years to fall. Daniel knelt beside her. She cupped his cheek, and for a moment, one of those rare windows of clarity dementia sometimes grants, she was all there. "You came back," she whispered. "I never stopped looking," he said, even though we both knew it wasn't true. But maybe it didn't matter. She touched his face like she was tracing a memory, not a person. "You were just a boy. So small. You wouldn't stop crying that night." "I remember," he said. "I hated myself," she whispered. And that broke him. He lowered his head to her lap and wept. Not like a child. Like a man who had carried too much, for too long, in too much silence. She stroked his hair. Then, just like that, the light in her eyes flickered. She looked at me. Then at him. Confused. Who is this?" And it was gone. The moment had passed. Daniel stood slowly. Backed away. Didn't speak. Just pressed his fingers to his lips and then to her forehead, like he was sealing something inside her she'd never be able to explain. We walked out in silence. Outside, he didn't cry. He just stared at the sky. "She came back for a moment," he said. "She did," I replied. "She knew you." He nodded. "I can live with that." That night, we sat on my porch. Two brothers, separated by decades and a lie so heavy it almost swallowed a family whole. We didn't talk much. Just passed a bottle of cheap whiskey back and forth, listening to the wind. It was enough. Before bed, Daniel handed me a folded note. "If she forgets again," he said, "read this to her. I wrote it when I was 14. For her. I never sent it." I opened it later that night. It said, "Dear Mom. I don't know where you are. I don't know why you left. But I forgive you. I hope you remember my laugh. I hope you're okay. And I hope one day, you'll tell someone about me. Love, Danny." I folded it back up, tucked it into her drawer. Because now, she had. Mom passed away 3 months later, just after sunrise. The nurse said it was peaceful, no struggle, no last words, just a long exhale that never circled back. I was there. So was Daniel. He'd stayed in town longer than planned. Said he didn't want to miss it if she remembered him again. She didn't. Not really. In her last weeks, she slipped deeper into that quiet place where time folds and familiar faces turn strange. She called me Daniel a few more times. Called Daniel, the boy with the song. But she never connected us the way we hoped. Never reached back across the years to finish the sentence she started. And yet, it didn't feel unfinished. Because the night before she died, we sat beside her bed, each of us on one side, holding her hands as she slept. Daniel pulled out a portable keyboard, the kind meant for music lessons, and softly played Clair de Lune. His fingers stumbled here and there. He said he hadn't touched keys in years. But she stirred. Not much. Just a faint smile. Like the melody had threaded its way through the fog and reached something untouched. That was enough. We buried her in the cemetery just outside town, next to my father, the man she married 5 years after she gave Daniel up. Daniel stood a few paces back during the service, not out of shame, but respect. Claire and Sarah knew by then. I told them everything. They'd taken it better than I expected, sadness, mostly. No blame. Just that stunned kind of grief that comes when you realize your childhood wasn't the whole story. After the service, Daniel walked up to the grave. He didn't say anything. Just placed the old photo of himself at the piano right above her name. No frame. Just the photo. She didn't forget me, he said later. She just couldn't carry me and still be the mom you needed. That stuck with me. Because he wasn't angry. He understood something I hadn't, that love sometimes folds under the weight of life. That a choice can hurt someone and still be made from fear, or love, or desperation, or all three at once. Daniel didn't stay in town. He said he'd visit, and I believe he will. We talk now. Not every day, but often. He sent me a photo last week of him rebuilding an old upright piano in his garage. Said he's teaching kids again. Said it feels good to give something away that was taken from him. I put the letter he wrote her, the one from when he was 14, in the memory book at her bedside. I found something else when I was cleaning out her things. It was a journal. Old, soft leather bound. The entries were spotty, but one stood out. It was dated July 2nd, 1974, the night before Daniel was born. I don't know if I'll be strong enough to give him away. But I want him to have a full life. Not just a survival. If he ever finds me, I hope he knows I didn't forget him. I loved him before I ever saw his face. I read that at the funeral. Daniel listened from the back row. When I finished, he bowed his head. Just for a second. And that was when I stopped calling him the brother I found. He was just, my brother. We didn't get all the answers. We'll never know who his father was, or what Mom told herself in the years that followed. But what we did get was enough. A name. A face. A chance to forgive. Some families are built in delivery rooms and childhood kitchens. Others are built later, in quiet halls, in music shops, in the space between memory and grace. And if you ever get the chance to turn a stranger into a sibling, take it. Because what's lost can stay lost forever. Or, it can come home. Just like he did.